On this episode of Who Dem.
People vote their pocketbook, and that's kind of what happened. I think that's kind of what helped Trump. His message was, he did talk about tariffs, but he also said from day one, the cost was going to come down. He was going to bring down the cost of groceries. He was going to, make things more affordable. He was going to fix inflation, and that's what helped him get elected. But right now, that's not what we're seeing.
The Trump administration is pivoting a little bit and capitulating to say that they're going to bail out farmers. They're going to have a stimulus package down the line where they can give farmers some funds and some security in response to, all the business that they're destroying for them. And I'm curious your take on that as the opposition party. Let's say we get to that point where there's farmers or a specific group of people, but in this case, farmers who are struggling because of policies the Trump administration does. And obviously farmers, they vote for Trump. They're rural voters. They usually vote Republican. But these people are suffering, and the Republicans want to pass a package that will, throw them a bone and make sure they're okay during this time when Trump administration policy is hurting them. As Democrats, do you guys go along with that and make sure that farmers get the stimulus aid they need or that would help them during this time? Or do you say, no, you guys did this. Why do we have to bail you guys out of this problem through passing this stimulus?
Well, look, the thing I'm going to argue for, right, in California, we're both from California.
Right. California
is the biggest agricultural state in the country,
right,
even though people don't tend to think of it that way.
No, you're right.
But it is. I want to go back to the way it was, right, where we actually allow farmers to sell their products. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways that they did that, right, was through USAID. They took away over $2 billion of business from the farmers by closing USAID and not allowing them to kind of send their products overseas, send wheat overseas, send soybeans overseas, all these products that we also did good for us in a way as far as good international relations to allow us to help these nations that needed the support from USAID and allowed our farmers to sell their products to USAID in order so that they could sell those products overseas or distribute those products overseas.
Yeah.
It's just kind of really hurt those farmers. And that's what we need to go back to.
So the problem is DOGE, is what you're saying. It's not.
Oh, DOGE is a huge problem. I mean, God, they're even talking right now. That's another thing that you didn't mention that's in the news right now, right? Is how much longer is Musk going to be around to kind of help support or to do whatever he's doing? But, DOGE has not been effective at all. They are constantly putting up false numbers. They are not finding any efficiency anywhere. They're counting contracts that have already ended as far as savings and things that they're saying that they've been able to eliminate. They're eliminating jobs, putting people in the unemployment line. How is that being efficient?
Yeah, and they're going to, look, I can't speak to what the future of DOGE is during the Trump administration, but it seems pretty clear that Elon's on his way out. At least the news in this past week, what the guy has a semi-legal, if not illegal, political lottery in the state of Wisconsin buy an election, and the winner
he did that during the presidential election too.
Absolutely, and the winner of this lottery just happens to be like a young Republican organizer, one of them. And then after doing all that, going to Wisconsin and walking around like an idiot with a cheese head on his head, the Democrat wins by 10 points in a state that is usually less than a point, if not a few, during presidential elections. Wisconsin is close, right? And the Democrat wins by 10 points after Elon makes it his thing that we need to keep this seat away from the radical liberal left, whatever. And the next day, there is reports of Donald Trump saying to his staff, his closest aides, that Musk will be gone in the near future. So, I think Trump is starting to understand that people associate Musk with the oligarchy, with the cuts that are happening right now, and the actual harm that's when when the administration goes and says, all right, we're going to cut funding for children's pediatric research, like who does that? That's like that's cartoon villain shit, right?
Right.
And people associate that kind of thing with Elon Musk, and that's why you see a Democrat winning by 10 points in Wisconsin, partially in my opinion.
Well, that, and and then Musk calling Social Security a Ponzi scheme. Which is, this is the retirement plan that most Americans rely on, right? That they paid into for decades after working, right? It is the expectation that their Social Security will be there to help support them in retirement. It definitely has helped. It helped my grandparents. It's helping my parents now. It's helping families, throughout the United States that rely on Social Security, and unfortunately for a lot of them, that's all that they have. And, for him to call it a Ponzi scheme, I think people are really kind of seeing, the effect that he is having, and that they don't want to be part of that, right? They don't want to see that he is out there trying to buy elections, which people saw through that as well. And again, that is the thing, that it is not having a good effect, I think, for the Republicans right now. But look, I will believe that he is fully gone and out of the way and pushed to the side when he stops giving them money all the time. When he stops supporting their elections, when he stops throwing money into these things, then we will know he's out of the picture.
Unfortunately,
but I don't think that's going to happen.
And that's not the system we live in, right?
Right.
I mean, even if Trump hates Elon Musk, and look, I doubt that there's going to be much money exchanging hands if for some reason there's a falling out in their relationship. But the reality is we live in a country that allows for unlimited independent spending on elections, right?
Right.
The Citizens United decision in 2010, in my opinion, is one of the worst things that's happened to our country in decades.
Agree.
It allowed millions and millions of dollars, like I said, unlimited money to be spent on these elections through whether you can donate to a super PAC, right? Effectively allowing people to buy elections. Now, obviously, those super PACs can't just talk to a campaign, but there's effects there, right? It allows for the money to be First Amendment speech. And to me, that allows for nothing less than just rule by the wealthiest Americans. It allows for those who have the most money to make sure that their ideas have the most influence. I'm not saying that there's a direct correlation between money and winning an election, right? I think Kamala Harris raised more money than Donald Trump in this last election cycle, but she lost. So, right, it's not always that black and white.
Yeah.
That being said,
but there's
that
a
is
lot,
who Elon Musk is.
I think the fact that what Citizens United did, right, it allowed corporations to make large donations to super PACs. It allows individuals to make large donations to super PAC, and none of that money is tracked.
Yeah.
They don't have to report it. It allows, like you said, right, individuals to kind of go and become big players in elections and really kind of influence elections in ways that they want it to go in their direction, right? Whatever the issue may be. It allows, large amounts of money to come in and influence things, right? Because you can run ads, right? All these super PACs, and the individual doesn't even have to know. They can be run to support individuals. They can be run to attack individuals, and the person that's benefiting from it, has no say or anything as to what's going on. And it is one of the things when I've talked to both members of Parliament from the UK. Our equivalents there in France, they're just amazed about the amount of money that comes into the United States elections. And actually, they're amazed, too, at the length of the elections, that the campaigning actually never really stops, especially in the House of Representatives. It never really stops.
No, you're on the go constantly.
It's ongoing continuously. But, where they have, they don't advertise on TV. They actually have to go out into the community and campaign and talk to people. And I will say, though, it is kind of on their, I think in the UK, I think somebody told me like their constituent base is like 50,000 people. It's a lot less than the 750,000 or whatever that we have, right? But it is, with that, they're able to go out into the community. They're able to go and talk to people, get to know them. And it is something that I think definitely at some point we got to take a look at. And I know I'm not advocating for it, but I know it's kind of been thrown out as like, do we need to change that 435 number in the House of Representatives to kind of
to increase it?
Yeah. And again, I'm not advocating for it, but I think maybe it's something that needs to kind of be looked at.
What would be the benefit of increasing the number of reps in the House?
I think it would allow more, I think, direct representation of individuals, right? So you actually would decrease the number that a member would represent.
Right.
So it would allow for more, I think, kind of direct representation, right? You wouldn't have to control such a large area.
Mm-hmm.
And for some members, it's an entire state, right? For me, it's I think it's almost nearly 800,000 people that I represent. And it is hard to kind of really go over that whole area there and kind of represent it all. And look, we get around, we try and do as much as we can, but if the numbers, some people have the argument, and again, I'm not advocating for it, but some people have the argument is if you increase the size and you represent a smaller amount of people, there's more direct democracy involved.
Yeah.
In that sense, and it would actually make it for better
Be
representation.
more difficult too for special interest groups and lobbying organizations or whoever plays a role in this town, on this street, to buy politicians and influence elections through that matter too, right? Right now there's 435. Let's say you quadruple that. Let's say you put 1,000 reps in the House of Representatives or more, right? That's a different situation in terms of control. Let's say in terms of special interest groups, and
it would definitely change, I think, our political system.
Yeah,
right?
And I think
the way how everything works and it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, a politician, a representative's job is to represent their constituents. That is the principle of what they came here to do. And I would argue that is not always the top priority for every member of Congress. I think there are members of Congress who are either here for career reasons, or there's obviously, once you have that level of influence in Washington, there's enormous amount of opportunity to monetize that. And if you increase that number, I think it allows for just a greater volume and greater diversity of voices across America that might not, have, if you represent less people too, maybe you're less likely to have an appeal to a special interest group. And I'm not saying all special interest groups are bad. There are plenty of good special interest groups, but I'm talking about the principle here of government, that we have influences outside of just the direct people that you are representing playing a role in how you vote. And I think overall, that tends to be a negative thing. Not always, but it tends to be. And increasing the number of representatives, I think in a way fights that. So I don't know. I don't know if that would be something that would gain a lot of momentum for representatives.
I don't know that it would either. I mean, I think people need I'm sure there's people that are looking into it and stuff like that. There's people, obviously, they're advocating for it. But it would definitely change the system and everything, the way that it works. But let's get back to the news of the day here, right? And
what's the news of the day?
Well, I kind of think the stock market and the tariffs and everything going. You still got Signalgate going on in the national security team.
Sure.
We're finding out like Mike Waltz, has now had like over numerous. I think they've said now maybe over like 20 chains that he's kind of started regarding national security issues that they're discussing on Signal. It's just
what Hillary Clinton
crazy.
Gets slammed by the FBI for using a private email server, and I think I even saw something that Mike.
And I
Waltz,
won't even say that the FBI didn't slam her, right? It was unfortunate that I think the FBI took it up like days right before the election that we need to look into it, and then they actually found there was nothing wrong. No secrets, nothing on that server.
Yeah.
Republicans were the one who continually attacked her. And yet, now they don't even want to kind of mention anything or bring it up about.
Because they're all corrupt. They all do the same thing. Right.
Using an unsecured
Mike Waltz is using
app.
Gmail to talk about government initiatives.
You know, he thinks he's still in Congress.
And what, there's like 20 different signal chats that he's created now that we know about?
He thinks he's still in Congress. Like, look, full disclosure, Congress, we use, you know, with other members, we use Signal, but it's not to talk about secure things. It's to talk about letters. It's to talk about legislation that's coming up. There are chats that go amongst members. And there's even bipartisan chats that kind of go on there too, right? Everything from, like I said, letters, legislation to baseball practice, you know, for the congressional baseball game. These are things that are discussed. But, you know, when I was at the Pentagon, we never, ever discussed anything on unsecured networks. We never discussed anything on our personal phones, computers, or anything. Anything that I used or I discussed that had to do with DoD business was always done on my my DoD phone, my DoD computer, and never would I ever have discussed anything. Even schedule a meeting on anything on an unsecure network or app.
Yeah, I mean, look, this story tells me a couple things. To be honest, in my opinion, it's kind of disappointing to me that it's something that we have to focus on so much and that the news has to cover. Don't get me wrong, this is a breach of national security and it is a pressing interest to Americans. But if we look in terms of the greater impact on American lives, to me, you know, this story tells me a couple things. One, not only is the Trump administration just have a complete disregard for norms and basic professional practices when conducting business with literally war with another country. But two, they're stupid. They're dumb. They don't know. If you're gonna do illegal shit, like at least don't fucking add a journalist to your group chat. Like, come on. But you know, to me, like this morning I wake up and it's tariffs, it's stocks are down, and you know, right now the market's down, and for those Americans that are invested in the stock market, it's not I don't like seeing the red on my phone when I wake up. That's bad, right?
Right.
And it can be used for political narratives, but beyond that, you know, the price of gas, the price of groceries.
Well, they're saying what did I see? I think they said as much like for a family of four, expenses could go up as much as $7,000 a year.
Yeah, no,
it is definitely going to have an effect on everything from groceries that you buy in the store to your clothing, your shoes. They're saying a pair of Nikes could go up. You know, $100 pair of Nikes could go up to $130 now.
Yeah,
everything it's there. And look, and I get that, you know, we want to bring manufacturing back into the United States, right? And that's something that I support and I want to do it. But the way he is trying to do it through tariffs is not going to work. I mean, look at Donald Trump is so vindictive, right? Is that the CHIPS Act had a bipartisan support there.
Oh,
and he called it one of the things when he did his joint address of Congress, the State of the Union. He called it one of the worst things this country's ever had, and it kind of like the House went silent as far as like everybody there, right?
There are battery plants that are being built, Toyota battery plants in Republican districts in the South because of the CHIPS and Science Act and because of the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah.
These are bringing jobs and billions of dollars in investment.
So there is
to the
investment
heartland.
that the country has made in order to bring those things back, right? In order to bring chips. You know, Taiwan is actually shifting manufacturing to the United States, building plants here, because we've made that investment and we've done it the right way through legislation in order to make that happen. The tariffs are not going to bring manufacturing back. It's just going to make things more expensive. It didn't work, you know, during the Depression and the Hoover administration when they tried it. It's not going to work now. I just wish Donald Trump would read and he would actually look things and read history and kind of see that, you know, this didn't work before, so why will it work now?
Yeah, well, I think And going back to the topic of the Inflation Reduction Act and Chips and Science Act, I think what we're going to see happen is a similar narrative to what happened with the Affordable Care Act under the first Trump administration, in the sense that Trump comes in as Trump has an incredibly large and fragile ego, and he sees an achievement of a Democratic president or someone, first black president who was a man that Trump could never be, and two, the man who beat him, Joe Biden. And he sees their signature legislative accomplishments and is like, they did this, therefore it's bad.
Yes.
And therefore, ideologically, he's going to be against the Inflation Reduction Act and the Chips and Science Act, which the Chips and Science Act passed largely with bipartisan support, which is another factor here. That being said, we saw the Affordable Care Act. We saw John McCain's famous thumbs down saving the bill, which is largely intact today, right? I mean, they got rid of the individual mandate, which is a big part of it, and that sucks. That's important. But the bill was popular. Fox News went on and raged about it for years, but overall was popular. And now we have the same thing going on with Republican members of Congress and the dilemma they face with pieces of legislation like the Inflation Reduction Act, right? Because they know that that bill brings investments to their district and brings
and a lot of them who
business.
Voted against it, you know, were happy when the money was
they
coming
went
into their
back
district.
and they touted those achievements.
Oh, they touted the achievements even though they voted against the bill.
And they know that if they vote against it again, that's going to be a great 30-second ad in this midterm election. And that's the dilemma they face. And I think we're going to see the bill actually stay intact pretty well over the next few years.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to go away. But again, this is, you know, it's the vindictiveness of it, right? To say that it was horrible and that, but it is actually working. It is moving manufacturing back to the United States. And we got to do similar things in a similar way if we want to bring other manufacturing back to the United States. And it's not going to happen overnight. You know, it's going to take years of investment. You know, in order to build that up. You just can't build a factory and put something together like in a snap of a finger where it's going to be up and running. It's not like opening up a coffee shop, you know, in a strip mall there where you can get it going maybe in about 2 months. You know, it's going to take a lot of planning into going into that and making sure that it gets happening and switching and bringing the manufacturing over back to the United States. But it's not going to happen as quickly as he keeps saying, right? And so he's telling people right now they got to kind of buckle up and suck it up for a little while, and it's going to be tough for a little bit. But if he's going to keep this going, and it's going to be a long time, right? I mean, this is a self-inflicted, you know, inflation thing that he is doing right now to the country. It is self-inflicted. Inflation was coming down. It was coming down at the end of the last administration, and now because of his actions, because of the tariffs, it's going right back up.
Yeah, no, the 2024 election is an interesting story. You basically had most major economic voices, the academics, if you say, of the industry, being like, the economy is actually doing pretty good, guys. You know, we're not fucked. We're doing better than the rest of the world after COVID. Inflation doesn't go down. People understand that you don't have prices go down. It stops increasing at the rate it is. That's a side note. But yes, economists were very, very high on the United States economy going into the 2024 election. And the American voters were basically like, nah, it's not. It's bad. Which is fine. I mean, voters can feel how they want about the economy. I think largely in part, I think that statement just means that this election was about other issues.
Well, you know, people vote their pocketbook, right? And, and we can look at all the indicators. The stock market went up. There were more jobs were created. People were actually earning more money. But the cost of goods, you know, was actually rising. And I think a lot of that was kind of coming out of the pandemic. You know, the PPP loans and the other things that we did to kind of keep people afloat and to keep them going during that time when, you know, businesses kind of had to shut down or things had to kind of go down because we were trying to stop the spread of COVID. You know, at some point that was going to have to be paid, right? And there were going to be repercussions for that. And that was inflation. It happened during during the Biden administration, right? And even though other factors were going up, like I said, salaries were going up, the economy, the stock market was doing well, trade was good, more jobs were being created, but the cost of goods were going up at that time, and that's really where people kind of voted, right? It's people are always going to vote their pocketbook, and that's one of the things I remember in one of my early political science classes, and
Yeah.
when I was in college, people vote their pocketbook, and that's kind of what happened. I think that's kind of what helped Trump. His message was, he did talk about tariffs, but he also said from day one, the cost was going to come down. He was going to bring down the cost of groceries. He was going to, make things more affordable. He was going to fix inflation, and that's what helped him get elected. But right now, that's not what we're seeing.
Yeah. I mean, look,
He's causing chaos.
It's pretty clear that in the short term, prices are going to go up, and day-to-day economic well-being is going to get worse for Americans. For the sake of this country, I have hope that these tariffs may be able to lead to better trade deals with our countries. And in the grand scheme of things get better for Americans, and there's more business, and there's better deals with these countries. I just don't know how optimistic I am that that's actually going to work. So we'll see.
I don't know if it's gonna be better deals. I think in the end it's gonna go back to probably what it was.
Yeah.
And he's gonna claim victory.
Yeah.
No,
that's true.
He's a master manipulator of the media and really kind of getting his message across. And, he'll be able to say like, oh, we got them to do this, and there are things, we're lowering the tariffs now. But, the other things, I think he's promising a lot of things he can't deliver on.
Yeah.
And one thing is really kind of being able to bring manufacturing back into the United States. And he's really kind of playing it up with the auto workers right now. But the thing that, one of the benefits of the thing that he did do in his first administration, right, is the USMCA was, because of our close relationship with Mexico and Canada, and because of the trade that we have with those two countries, it has allowed the, car manufacturers like Ford and Chevrolet to keep prices down because they can build some of the parts in Mexico that are in Canada.
Right.
And assemble the cars here in the United States. But because they're able to get the parts cheaper in other parts, it's allowed the vehicles, like pickup trucks, which are very popular in the United States. And it's not, pickup trucks are not something, if you go around the world and you're going to like Europe, there's no F-150s.
No, it's an American thing. Yeah.
There are no F-150s
that is
around.
red-blooded. You see that in Montana.
Right. So those trucks are not going to be exported into Europe. They're not going to be driven around Japan, right? So these are, specifically being sold in the United States, right? And so the car manufacturers have done what they can by working with Mexico and Canada and there to kind of really keep the prices down, and it has, and they are assembled here in the United States. But having some of the parts manufactured in different, in our allies right there are two of our closest trading partners right there in Canada and Mexico has allowed us to keep the price down, which has benefited the American consumer.
Yeah.
And that's going away right now. Because all those prices are going to become more expensive now. I was watching on the news this morning, just even an auto mechanic said it's going to become more expensive now to get the parts. Somebody needs to repair their vehicle. It's going to become more expensive because now I have to pay more for the parts in order to get them. So which means the owner who's getting their car fixed is going to have to pay more in order to get these things done.
So the point is, basic Americans doing basic business with each other, it's more expensive.
Yeah.
It's worse. This is because of tariffs. That's important to know.
Time for a quick message from our sponsors.
This episode of Who Dem is brought to you by Elect Dems Now. We all know that podcasts are the future. They give us the chance to connect with our elected officials like never before. That's why Elect Dems Now is committed to helping voters engage with the people who represent us. Supporting organizations that bring us closer to our representatives is crucial to advancing and advocating for the change we want to see. Whether it's $5 or $50, every donation to Elect Dems Now helps shape our future and ensures a country we can all be proud of. Your support sends a clear message to candidates and elected officials. Connecting with you means connecting with America. To contribute and make a difference, visit electdemsnow.org today. Your donation helps build a world where we are all connected. Paid for by Elect Dems Now, electdemsnow.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. Speaking of major 21st century or like major events happening these days, it's March Madness right now. Right. I want to show you a graphic here.
Mm-hmm. We can't pop it on the screen today?
Well, I guess we didn't get it up. Well, I'll just nah, it's okay.
All right, show it to me.
It's March Madness, and this is the Final Four of the most influential. This is the Final Four, of the most influential events of the 21st century. Who wins that Final Four, in your opinion?
I mean, right now, I think it's, or you're saying of the 20th century?
This is the 21st
century.
Yeah, this is the 21st century.
Well,
I think COVID smokes the 2016 election. They had an easy path to the Final Four there.
Yeah. I don't know. The Great Recession, are we talking right now? I mean, right now, what's going on with right now, that could be the Great Recession.
That could be the Great Recession. I mean, they're up against 9/11, though. I think that's a tough one for them.
Well, 9/11 was in the 20th, which was...
No, it was 2001.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Right there at the beginning of the 21st century. God, it's so long ago.
I know. This is everything that's happened so far, and it's been, 25 years? Less than that? Mm-hmm. So, if we get 75 more is going to be a long way to go.
Yeah, I mean, they all have effects, right? I think 9/11 and COVID are definitely probably the two that still have kind of overlasting effects.
I think that's the championship round right there.
Yeah.
That's like the Duke versus Auburn championship.
I think, I mean, you can look at, we have, because of 9/11, we now have the Homeland Security Department, which is a cabinet position post, which we didn't have before 9/11. We have our security through the airports, TSA agents, so everything that didn't exist before 9/11.
Yeah, that and everything else in the Middle East. I mean, the Iraq War and then ISIS and you know, more and more terrorism in the region because of an extrajudicial invasion by the United States in 2003. I think, I'm going to be honest. I think 9/11 might have to win.
9/11 probably does win. I agree with you on that.
You have torture of international terrorism suspects in Guantanamo Bay. You have the Patriot Act, which led to spying on Americans. It's, 9/11 had a lot of cascading effects. I think COVID it's like the young prospect in this game, and it's gotten through its bracket and it's made it to the championship.
I think COVID, I mean, obviously, I think there's some, like we talked about inflation just right now, right? That was an effect of COVID and everything that we did to try and keep businesses afloat, and to put money in people's pockets, like the stimulus checks that Donald Trump, wanted signed with his name, was all part of, that helped cause the inflation that came later on. But I think in that sense, the thing I worry more about COVID, right, is somehow it became a bad thing and a negative thing where people kind of thought we overreacted or we did this. And the thing is, we don't really know. I mean, over 1 million people died. And if we had done nothing, and there's people that make the argument that, I think it was too extreme, our response is too extreme, or we went too far. And if we didn't do anything,
more people would
have died.
Yes.
And who knows how many more people that could have been. And this natural immunity thing was just like, How's that working with the measles right now? You know, it's not, right? It's because people have kind of come out against this negative reaction to vaccines and how this false information and misinformation about how bad they could be and how they cause, other side effects such as Alzheimer's or God, what's the other thing they're saying they cause?
It's total horseshit, right?
It is.
Vaccines are
It
healthy.
is. Yeah.
There's little to no evidence that vaccines.
Yeah. Autism, that's the other
Autism,
item.
right.
I can't think of that right now. But there is a positive. Vaccines do good, and of course, I mean, there's always going to be somebody who's allergic to something, right? But for the vast majority of people, they are good. Like my kids are never going to know what chickenpox is.
Yes.
And I don't even know. I don't know how. Is that a vaccine you got when you were young?
I did get the chickenpox vaccine.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I've had I had my 2 first COVID shots, and then I had
Right.
3 boosters on top of that. There's 5 COVID shots in this arm.
Yeah.
And I'll go up to someone who's conservative or some of my friends who have been radicalized by right-wing culture, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, my parents would never let me do that," or do you have a tracking chip by Bill Gates in you, or that's why you stay all this stupid shit all the time, Max, because you have all these vaccines in you. It's corrupted your brain. I'm like, come on, man. Like, why did we get to the point where doing something that is basic public health policy is a fucking conspiracy theory?
Yeah.
I don't get that.
And look, the one thing I will always give the Trump administration credit for in his first term was
Operation Warp
Warp
Speed.
Speed, right? And
Yeah.
it is. I think they took his picture down now, but Secretary Esper, in his picture that they, for every, they do it for all the, for every Secretary of Defense, all the service secretaries, all the chairmans of the Joint Chiefs. That you walk down their hallway, right?
Yeah.
And they have all the portraits up of the former individuals who held those positions. And,
Right.
and Esper's was, it was interesting because he's there, he's sitting at a desk, or he's standing next to a desk, and on that desk was a binder, and on the binder, Operation Warp Speed is what it said, right? I mean, he touted that as one of his great achievements there during the Trump administration to get that. And it was. I mean, they did it in record time to get that thing done within basically, less than a year to come up with the vaccine in order to get that done. And how they just politicized it and kind of made it this negative thing that, oh, no, you shouldn't do it. And the crazy thing is, I think if Trump had won in 20, that wouldn't have been the case. They would have been encouraging everybody to take it and to get it done. And this is going to help save lives there. And it did. In the active duty military and the Department of Defense, I think we had over 95% people got vaccinated, our active duty military. We lost 96 people. 93 of those 96 were not vaccinated.
So that means in terms of people who left the department because they wouldn't get vaccinated.
No, these were people like on active duty, like people that we had lost on active duty. I'm talking, when you're on active duty, a lot of the people are the thing that kind of came up about, service members like not wanting to take the vaccine or this or that. Actually, it was mostly in the reserves.
Sure.
That they didn't want to take it. The active duty, pretty much, like I said, right, it's over 95% of the active duty, I believe. It was either 94 or 95% got vaccinated.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Trump at first was Operation Warp Speed that was his thing. He wanted the credit for it. He wanted America to be the first one to have the vaccine. And it's interesting to me because usually him and his base, they're in lockstep with each other. That it's just a complete, cult following. But I think what was interesting during this time is you start to have a lot of right-wing influencers gain their influence, the Joe Rogans of the world, the whoever's of the world that are going off on this vaccine and talking about its bullshit negative health effects. And, you know, then you have Biden as president. Now he's presiding over the administration of the vaccines and the sort of
Right.
return to normalcy after
Mhm.
COVID. And we got the vaccines, but we got it eventually. But for a while, it didn't really look like we were going to get that. I mean, you have sort of this era where it's like June or July of 2021, and it almost feels like we're about to go back to normal. And for now, the vaccine, both doses have been available to most Americans for a couple months now. Then you have the Delta variant, and things start getting scary again. And then, you know, the next summer you have rampant inflation, and before even that, you have the Omicron variant, which was even worse than the Delta variant for a while. And I think that sort of return to like what was normal or what could be as a result of Operation Warp Speed and these vaccines and just finally ending this pandemic. And then now with just the way COVID has permanently altered our lives with remote work and technology and just tech companies being a part of our lives so much, it's a promise that was never really realized to Americans. And I think when you're someone who's on the right and is looking for someone to blame, especially when the opposite party is in power, it's very easy to go and say, okay, well, this thing is bad, didn't help, it didn't work. Why are you forcing us to take this? Let's listen to, these voices we hear, and it's wrong. And there needs to be more conversations had and more people who are connected to be able to bridge these divides. But when you look at it, it doesn't surprise me that the vaccine became so politicized and almost became a dangerous ideology in some ways on the far right as it has.
Well, there was a lot of drastic measures again, right? I think, like we kind of talked about earlier, a lot of steps were taken. Businesses had to shut down. People couldn't go to work. People had to remote work. There was a lot of hurt right there, kind of thing, and so people were looking for something to blame, right? It's like, why are we doing this? And there was like a reaction. It's like, oh, I think we went too far. And so, I think people were looking for someone to blame, and it kind of became like, okay, well, who's managing this now? And it became kind of like the current administration right there, right? Which kind of created this political outfall. And so it became them who had done it. If it had been a Republican in office, it would have been the Republican who got a lot of the blame. But it's what it is. But again, I think we don't know what the reaction, or if we had done nothing, it could have been a lot worse.
Oh, 1,000%.
I think the thing now is too, right, is look, the flu, we kind of forget about the flu, right? The flu kind of came in the early 20th century.
Yeah.
And, they called it the Spanish flu at the time or whatever, right? But now it's just influenza, the flu. It's the same thing. And it's every year they look at the flu from last year and they kind of change the flu vaccine, the variant, because that same flu that came in the early 20th century is still with us today. And it's going to be the same thing with COVID. It hasn't gone away, even though we don't really hear about it as much, right? But it's still out there, and it's still getting people sick, and pretty sure there's still people dying from it. And it is something that is just, we don't know. I mean, maybe one day they will be able to come up with something that kind of eliminates it and just will protect everybody, kind of like we were able to do with measles and to do with chicken pox and polio. But so right now, it's they're going to be looking at it every year and kind of adjusting to make those changes that they need to make in order to kind of come up with the next vaccine, right? And it's a guess. It's a guess. The one thing, and the only reason I kind of know a little bit about this, right, is because I was in charge. The Defense Health Activity actually fell under my area of responsibility when I was the Undersecretary of Defense there for PNR. But because we had everybody wearing masks too to kind of protect everybody, it actually kind of minimized the flu that was out there.
Right.
So I remember they were talking about when they were coming up with a new flu vaccine for like around like 22, they were actually kind of taking a bigger guess because there wasn't as much flu out there as the year before because everybody was wearing a mask, and it minimized the flu that people got. So they weren't really sure how to adjust the flu vaccine for the following year.
Yeah.
Which kind of which is I thought was kind of a funny little story, but but look, we don't want everybody walking around with the mask around it there. I know that was something that a lot of people complained about too, having to wear the mask.
The freedom muzzles, as they said. Yeah.
But look, I got 2 young boys. They were 5 years old, 6 years old. They had to wear it when they went to school. I think they came out okay on the good end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and going back to, okay, what are the long-term effects of it? It's like a lot of kids lost a lot of important school during that time too.
Yeah.
Big part of education is just learning and being in the classroom with kids your age and under the supervision of an adult and learning from your environment, right? You take that away, that also has long-term effects.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're going to be feeling the effects of COVID on our daily lives and our economy for years to come. I mean, not 9/11, we kind of know that more. It fundamentally changed our national security identity, but COVID's going to be around for a while. So it's important. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was your colleague, Cory Booker, spent 25 hours on the Senate floor filibustering. Broke the all-time record, was held by Strom Thurmond when he was filibustering the Civil Rights Act, which I heard reporting that Cory Booker was actually really bothered by the fact that he held the record and wanted to break the record, partially for that reason. But this filibuster was not a response to any bill. It was just a protest against the Trump administration and their current practices. What are your thoughts on Cory's method and his decision to do this? Do you think it's effective? Or what are your thoughts right now?
Look, I think it was something. Well, first, it was an amazing achievement that he was able to go and do that for that long. I can't even imagine.
He fasted for days before and stopped drinking water like in the last day, so he didn't have to use the bathroom. Like it's insane.
It is. I mean, to actually be out there and speaking for like over, like you said, 25 hours, I kind of, just having to do it for 5 minutes sometimes makes me nervous.
Yeah.
So it's just hard to imagine that. But I think it was an incredible achievement. I think it was something that excited the Democratic base. I think people were excited to see that he was doing that and he was speaking out against Donald Trump and his policies. And it really kind of created some energy, and it created, it got people excited. And I know a lot of my colleagues were able to get down there and go and check it out and see him and cheer him on. And I know some of my interns were trying to get down there. They said it was like a 2-hour wait.
Yeah.
In line just to kind of get in there, just to be able to see a little bit of it.
Wow.
But, it's created excitement. And I think hopefully it's excitement that we'll be able to continue to carry on. That'll kind of energize people, right? To allow us to kind of continue to speak out against this current administration and what they're doing and how really their policies are having a negative effect on the American people. Not only the American people, the American economy, and just international relations and just everything. Again, I think if you want to look at these tariffs, the other interesting thing is that somehow Russia was left out of this.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, we don't really do a lot of trade right now with Russia. But, there's still energy stuff and things that they're doing right now. But the fact that they were just left off the list is just another thing to kind of show what this administration is doing and how he bows down to oligarchs and
Trump wants to be Putin.
authoritarians and to really kind of. You're right. He wants to be one of them. He wants to be able to rule like they rule with complete
what has Putin
dominance.
done for the past decades? He's taken measures to ensure that there are no term limits in Russia and that he can stay in power as long as he lives. And that is exactly what a president who's like, I'm going to run for a third term. I'm convinced I can do it. And is exploring ways to do it. And I think he's got top legal officials in the Justice Department right now working on that to make sure he can do that. That's Putin shit. All right. That's not democratic. That's not American.
Yeah.
Right? We have norms in this country, and norms have become laws through the Constitution. Now you can only serve for 2 terms, and that's against that.
I'm still not convinced that he actually wants to do a third term or that he thinks he can. And I think part of it, that's when we talk about his distractions, right? I believe him saying running for a third term is part of that distraction. That he's probably going to start after this week, the next couple of days. He's probably going to talk more about that and other things to distract away from the economy and how bad it's doing.
Well, right. And when he talks about running for a third term, we don't talk about how
one
of the main countries
it causes a distraction because now that becomes the focus instead of the other bad things that he's doing.
Like what we should know is that, Russia is one of the countries that got left off these tariffs. We should know that Starlink is working in behind the scenes business deals with the Philippines to make sure their business is still intact even through all these tariffs, right? Elon Musk owned company. That's what we should be talking about because this is a blatant corrupt administration. But we can talk about these PR stunts that are, essentially a president talking about disrupting norms and things that are eye-catching to most Americans because it's easy to. But, it's the little things. It's these behind-the-scene things with Musk and Trump that just indicate an administration that has disregard for what's best for the American people and is mainly here for opportunist reasons, especially Musk.
North Korea.
North Korea and Russia left off the tariffs. It's a great company.
I mean, if you're putting in islands that don't have any people, that are just full of penguins, and you're putting them on the list, you would think you would at least put Russia and North Korea on the list, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how much trade are we doing? And the excuse was, we don't do trade with those countries. But, I mean, how much trade are we doing with the penguins, right, that we're putting them on the list?
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, well, things aren't so good in the world right now. And I think while I don't necessarily, I guess I'm a little bit confused about the tactic and the goal that Cory Booker was trying to accomplish by what he did, given that he wasn't actually really filibustering during a legislative session. He did it through the night and just occupied the floor into the next day. Again, incredible feat. And I'm enthralled that someone is actually doing something and that is doing something.
And then look, I think that's its purpose, right? And I think that was he saw a need to get out there and to do something because a lot of the pushback on Democrats has been like, what are you all doing? You're not doing anything. Why doesn't I get a lot of like, why aren't you speaking out against this? Why aren't you saying anything about this? And the fact is we are. And, I took my interns out to lunch yesterday, and we had a great conversation. And, they were telling me about some of the calls they get and like, well, why hasn't he said anything about this? And she said she will like send them to like the media page where they can check it out and kind of see. And like, if you go to this video, you'll see that he is actually speaking out against this. And she said she actually had one person call back and like, I had no idea. And look, and I get it too, right? Unless you're watching C-SPAN 24 hours a day, you're not going to know all this stuff and everything. And we try and get it out as much as we can, and we're putting out videos all the time. And hopefully this show is, another way to getting our message out and letting people know what we're talking about and how we're talking about the issues. But I think he kind of saw that something needed to be done, and so he took the initiative to go out and to do that,
Right.
and to kind of talk about this issue and really the negative effects this administration is having on the American people.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an
And
eyeball
it
catcher.
is,
Yeah,
it's creating some excitement right now.
creates excitement. It catches eyeballs, and at the very least, it's a headline that the Democratic Party can use in fundraising emails.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that jokingly, right? But money does help. Money does help win elections. So, and especially when you're going up against Elon Musk, who just has limitless pocketbooks to spend on congressional campaigns all over the country. I mean, we saw judges in Wisconsin. Like, why is your whole ego riding on this one race
$20
in
million
Wisconsin?
he lost.
You know what? Keep spending it, man.
People are seeing through that, though, as we were talking about earlier. They're seeing through the fact that you can't just go out and buy elections. You can't go out and buy, state Supreme Court justices.
Oh, yeah, people are sick of him. He's like the George Soros of the Republican Party, except even more unlikable. So, yeah, his time in the limelight will not be forever.
Yeah, and you're saying the George Soros, but the Republicans are the one who created the image of George Soros and all of that, right? It's
exactly
that he's nothing like Elon Musk, and that was just something that they kind of picked up on to kind of make him the bad guy in order to kind of show about how he's trying to influence politics and kind of make it more liberal or whatever. But he's not doing anything, close to what the Koch brothers were trying to do, are still trying to do, although they've kind of backed off. I think have become a little bit more silent because they weren't as effective. And then also, now, Elon Musk has kind of taken up that torch to become the person to try and influence elections. Funny little story. Like, I think before I ever ran, I actually did get an invite from the Koch brothers one time to become part of their Latino. They were trying to consolidate Latino voters amongst their policies and things like that.
Yeah.
And I did actually get invited to one of their events.
Okay.
I did not go.
I'm glad.
But I felt it was funny that they kind of actually reached out to me in order to kind of invite me to that. Because they were trying to consolidate Latinos to bring them along their conservative path, I guess.
Yeah, well, there definitely are more Latinos that are voting Republican these days. I don't know if it's because of the Koch brothers, though. I think it's
no. I mean, look, again, everybody votes their pocketbook.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people that I know that I talk to, they were seeing it right. It's they're getting more money in their pocket, but things are more expensive. I think some Latino business owners that I know were, they kind of blamed immigration for taking away. I had one guy tell me that he was losing bids on jobs in construction because these other people were underbid him because they were undocumented individuals that were doing this, and they could hire cheap labor. But it's not that he wasn't working, right? It's not like he's not working. It's not like he's not getting jobs. But they kind of became the excuses and things for them, I guess. For people to complain about.
So you're saying Latino immigrants or people in the Latino community, while maybe there's hatred towards illegal immigrants throughout America, the Latino community or people who have immigrated in the past really hate illegal immigrants, even more so.
I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
I wouldn't say they hate them more, but I think, a lot of times when times get rough, and you can see this throughout the history of our country, right? During the Depression in the 30s, right there, during the Great Depression, people were down on immigration too, right? Because they kind of thought they were coming in to flood the country, and they were taking jobs away from American citizens.
Yeah.
It's been the same argument through every economic crisis, throughout our history. Same thing. You can go back even further to the Irish immigrants that were coming in, you know, before the Civil War and after the Civil War, that they were taking away jobs. The Italian immigrants, the Irish immigrants. It's been a constant theme throughout the United States history that during tough economic times, immigrants have always become the scapegoat. And
It's true.
And today it's no different today. The only thing that changes is the location and the actual
location,
immigrants.
the color of their skin. Yeah,
right,
no, you're right.
Where they're
I
coming
mean,
from. You ever watch the movie Blazing Saddles?
I haven't.
You haven't? Oh my
haven't.
God, you got to watch Blazing Saddles.
All
It's
right.
it's
Why?
one of the all-time great Mel Brooks movies. And it's a comedy, and it was actually written by Mel Brooks and Richard Pryor. But it is a comedy, and some of the dialogue and everything that they say is kind of maybe for these. I don't know if you can make that movie today, but for the 1970s, it was a great movie, and it's still funny and it holds up. But there's a great line in there where they're talking about it's the bad guys are trying to take over this town because the railroad's going to run through it, so they want to be able to control the town and get rich off of the new railroad that's going to bring new people in and everything and new business into the community. And so the townspeople are kind of getting together to kind of fight it, and the sheriff brings in the railroad workers who are immigrants, right?
Yeah.
They're Italian, they're Chinese, they're Irish, and they're black.
Mm-hmm.
All these different diverse communities coming in to kind of go, and they're like, hey, we can defeat them if we kind of basically all pull together and kind of, all they want is like a little plot of land where they can call their own and kind of do their own thing and maybe kind of farm some product and do that. And so there's this funny line, though, in the movie. And this is the thing I don't think people really kind of understand all the time when you talk about immigration in the United States and how it's kind of changed but in the movie, he's like, okay, he's like, well, we'll take the Chinese and we'll take the blacks, but he doesn't say it. And he says it in kind of more racist terms. He goes, but we don't want the Irish. Now, today, nobody would ever kind of think, Irish immigrants or Irish people here in the United States, that was a bad thing. But there was a time.
My roommate's Irish, and he drinks a Guinness every day if he can. And no, I get it why we used to not like them a little bit more.
I don't think it has anything to do with that. But I'm saying, there was a negative context to the Irish immigrants in coming into this country back, during that time in our history. But somehow that's kind of, I think, forgotten, right? It's, we have St. Patrick's Day and everybody loves their Guinness, and it's all, the Irish are great and they have a great culture, and, they have a great parade in New York every year. But somehow it's forgotten there, but it is, but my point is just throughout our history here in the United States, immigrants have always become the scapegoat for when times has gotten bad or rough. And the only thing that's really changed is where the immigrants are coming from.
America, we have the deepest, we're the LeBron James of racism. Like, if you think there's a group of people that could have racism done to them, we've done it.
Yeah.
Like Irish, Italians, Jews, immigrants, blacks, Latinos, everywhere, every type of people, we've done the racism.
You go to the Holocaust Museum, and they got a great exhibit about how, really even kind of before and kind of during at the beginning of the Holocaust, how the United States, there was a great number of Americans here in the United States that were trying to prevent Jewish immigrants coming into the United States.
Right. I mean, there's a famous story about the boat that came over from Europe that full of Jews escaping the Holocaust that FDR denied, sent back to Europe. They all died in the Holocaust. Yeah. Right. We have a deep history of not accepting immigrants and people fleeing to our country. Right now it's no different. But we do know in as time bends, what is it? I think it's Martin Luther King said this. History has a long bending curve, but it bends to justice. It was something along those lines. But over time, we've come to embrace immigrants more and more. We are, regardless of how we treat the southern border right now. We are a nation of immigrants.
We are a nation of. We've always been a nation of immigrants.
And not only are we a nation of immigrants, but we are a nation of immigrants who have deeply contributed to, our country, regardless of whether or not you like. I mean, and now the right goes to this of, I don't like the H-1B visas. I don't like the H-1B visas.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, we need the HB1s. We need HB2s.
Yeah.
And look, Ronald Reagan, I think, made, he did a lot of bad stuff too, right? But I think one of the good things right there is he recognized and he spoke about it and he did something about it, was the impact that immigrants had on this country. And that's why he had the amnesty there to kind of, people were here, were making contributions to the country and they wanted to stay. He gave them that opportunity to do that. And it's had a positive effect. And, another thing is, I remember being at an event one time, and Michael Bloomberg, when he was mayor of New York, came in, and talked
Another
about
one of the oligarchs. Yeah.
Huh?
Another one of the big George Soros villain types.
He came in and really, talked about, like, if we really want to revitalize an area, we should send immigrants there. And they will help revitalize the area.
Yeah.
Because they will set up their businesses, they will come in, they will do what they need to do in order to kind of be successful. And it'll help kind of spur the economy of those areas and revitalize it.
Absolutely.
And I think those are lessons that should be learned and that we should do, right? That were the things that we need to continue. And that's why I've always supported Dreamers. That's why I've always supported our DACA recipients, these kids who've grown up here, who just want to make contributions here. This is their home. This is the only place they've known as home, and they want to make a positive impact. And why we would deny that is just, beyond belief.
Well, yeah, and I know we've been talking for a while now, but right now our country is extrajudicially denying that right to citizens, right? We have a story this week coming out that a man was sent to an El Salvadorian prison because of a clerical error.
Yeah.
Meaning he wasn't even supposed to be there.
They can't get him back.
And then they can't get him back?
Yeah.
First of all, what the fuck do you mean you can't get him back? We're the United States of America. We're the most powerful country in the world.
Yeah.
You don't have the diplomatic power to get a prisoner from El Salvador? You kidding me?
Yeah.
And that guy who's innocent and had the right to be here is taken from his family. He was a father.
Yeah.
And now his children, and then the U.S. government says to him and his family that, too bad he's in El Salvadorian hands now? No.
Yeah.
Do something. The fact that you're not doing something is simply a hatred. It's racism.
Yeah.
And it's a hatred and it's a piece of an agenda that is full of hate and shouldn't have the power that it does. It's a horrible story. And I don't know if you've dealt with any dialogue in Congress about this, or the family has reached out to their member. But it's saddening to see. It's one of the many sad things to see this administration do that.
Well, look, it's another, again, right? It's just another thing, that the negative aspect of this administration, right? Whether it's the economy, whether it's immigrants, or even the treatment of U.S. citizens who may speak with an accent. All right, it's to show them that they're not wanted and that they're not needed, and to kind of make the assumption that people are, just because you talk different or just because you don't look like a certain way, that somehow you're not American. And it's the same thing with the language thing, right? I read, I don't even know if he signed it yet or not, but an executive order to make make English the official language.
Why?
Exactly. I mean, first of all, it's not even our language, right? It belongs to England. It's their language. We speak it, right? But when you look at the whole territory of what now is the United States, and you can even include Alaska and Hawaii, because they're part of the United States too, right? I mean, but when you look at the continental United States, English was only spoken in a small part of what is now the United States, right? It's like you go, the Louisiana Purchase, that was all French territory where they spoke French, and then everything in the Southwest was all, Spanish, used to be Spanish territory.
What, am I going to make hot dogs the official food of the United States?
Yeah.
Am I going to make a pit bull, the dog of the United States.
But even again, those things aren't typically. That's not American either, right?
Am I going to make Ford the car of the United States because it's here? Like, come on, man. It's virtue signaling to build up. This
I always
whole
thought
agenda.
and look, one of the negative things I think California English is actually the official language of California.
Yeah.
I don't know if people actually know that, but it was something that was kind of, I think, passed in the law back in the 80s or whatever. But we don't really act like it that way, right? You can get
Whatever other town is like San Francisco, Los Angeles, which means the Angels.
But you can get, a lot of, if you need state documents in California, you need official documents, you can get them in your language.
Yeah.
That's always been made available.
No, and I remember.
But the fact to say that, when you want to say like one language or as official language is really kind of crapping on, I think, the diverse population that we have, the number of people that are Americans. And look, my Spanish is horrible. I don't even say I speak Spanish because it is so bad. But I would never, ever want to say or even pass a law or support a law that we would say, like, we have one official language here in the United States because, unlike our Secretary of Defense, I do believe diversity is one of the strengths of our nation. And I love the fact that our nation is so diverse and that it's made up of many people from many different countries that bring into this melting pot to make an impact here in the United States and really kind of make us so unique amongst the world. There is no other country like us because of our diversity. And it is something that we should always celebrate.
We are the most powerful and strongest economy in the world because people come here because you can do things here.
Yeah.
We have films that are made in California that are watched all over the world and influence global culture. We have some of the top musicians and culture providers in the world here. We have Silicon Valley, which has created technology that has fundamentally changed the way we interact with people of humanity. And many, many years of inventions before that in aviation and automobiles and many, many more. That happens because we have people from all over the world that come here that know you can do something if you come here. And the way this administration treats that dream is counterintuitive to the version of America that it has built.
Yeah.
But
right on there.
yeah. Anyway, that's my piece for today. Shall we call it?
All right. Thanks.